We think it's important for athletes to be well hydrated, well nourished, and well rested. And hydration is really important because water is important to the body. So water is a critical element for almost everything that happens in the body. While it can be microscopic at cell levels, like nutrient transport, or core temperature regulation, or even cardiac function. The consequences of dehydration are different for different people. Our athletes probably are more focused on the declines in performance, but we also have to think about the health issues that come from dehydration. So an inability to regulate core body temperature means you're more likely to have heat illness. You could have nausea or vomiting or cramping, or you could even just notice low energy levels and more fatigue. So we want athletes to be hydrated throughout the day, and we don't really want people to be thinking about fluid intake in terms of before, during, or after the event. We want to think about it more as a daily thing. But if we're focused a little bit more on prepping our athletes to be successful, we want to make sure that about 4 hours before a practice or a game, they're thinking about their hydration status. And so you probably want to drink about a water bottle, whether it's water or a sports drink, about 4 hours before. And then about 15 minutes before, you want to drink some water. So sports drinks are really important for certain people. If you're a salty sweater, it probably makes sense to take in a sports drink during activities. If your activity is going to last less than 60 minutes, and if it's not a high intensity activity, you're probably okay with water. But if we're thinking about hydrating during activities, we want to think about the intensity level and the length of period that you're working out. So every 15 to 20 minutes, you want to take about 3 gulps of either water or sports drink, depending on the intensity of your activity and the length of time it's going to take place.
A healthy diet impacts a young athlete's development in the way that we know that what we take into our bodies is what we use for energy, and energy is what we need to perform on the athletic field and any other place that you need to perform any exercise type activity. So if if nutritional intake for an athlete is not adequate in order for them to perform all of those athletic endeavors at a high level, then the athlete may not perform well, may not be as fast, as strong. There may be more errors, and also injury risk goes up. Proteins are important, and healthy proteins at that. So chicken, pork, turkey, things like that are good. Nuts are a good source, and nut butter, a good source of proteins. We also like to talk about healthy fats. So we don't like fried foods or lots of sweets or candy, but healthy fat is a good idea. Things like avocado and butter sometimes can also be helpful. The science behind why our body needs carbohydrates has to do with muscle energy, and carbohydrates are one of the easier building blocks for our muscle to break down and to use as energy quickly, whereas proteins and fats take a little bit of time. Game day nutrition is important. It's a little bit difficult to fit in where you might have a meal on those days, so snacking is really important on game days, especially where you have multiple games back to back. So it's important to plan ahead, thinking about what nutritional snacks pack a really good combination of things. Like, you want to make sure that you get some carbohydrates, some protein, but focus on the carbohydrates, making sure also that hydration is met during that day so there's not a dehydration problem by the end of the day with cramping, muscle weakness, and fatigue. A snack an hour before is appropriate, as well as focusing on drinking a 20-ounce bottle of water the hour before an event. But it's hard to have a really big meal in an hour before a big game. A lot of athletes will not want to do that, and I understand that. However, we're going to need to push that meal back probably about 2 hours before for a big meal, and maybe just a snack an hour beforehand. The other important thing to think about is recovery. So 15 minutes after exercise is complete, we need to make sure that we have a snack and fluids coming in. And so that needs to replace everything that we've lost, and we need to refuel so that we have lower injury risk and we're able to build that muscle and that speed with our training sessions more easily.
Sleep is very important for our athletes. It's an essential body function. It helps recover from the day and prepare for the next day. So making sure that you have a consistent sleep routine makes a lot of sense. The same time going to bed each day and the same time getting up. It takes about 7 days to get into a new sleep pattern, so it's something you have to work at. The other thing is to think about the sleep environment. So people tend to do a little bit better when it's a dark, quiet room, maybe a little bit on the cooler side, and a place that they're familiar with. The other thing, it's important to avoid caffeine or alcohol or eating right before bed. And we try really hard to avoid having long naps during the afternoon because that will affect your sleep later that night. For people that have sleep deprivation or they haven't gotten enough sleep, we worry about a couple of things. We can see changes in mental awareness. You can seem more foggy. It can be harder for you to remember things or function at a high level. You might even have troubles with reaction time or notice that your memory is a little bit off. The other things we think about with athletes are that sleep can also affect your cardiac performance. And the thing that our athletes notice most of all, and are probably most focused on, is that when we're comparing athletes who have gotten enough sleep to people who haven't had enough sleep, we see that the people that are lacking the sleep probably have a higher risk of injury.